Hi, everyone. I'm Terrence Arjun. I'm the manager of 192 Books, and we are here tonight to celebrate the publication of Dorothea Lasky's new book, Memory, out on Semiotexte. Thank you, Dorothea, for being here, and Ariana Reines, who will be speaking with her. But I'll keep it very brief. I've been reading Memory all week, and I've just been on the train, in bed, everywhere reading that book. I'm so obsessed. But Dorothea Lasky is the author of 8 full-length collections of poetry, including most recently The Shining and Mother. She is also the author of the prose book Animal and a future book about Sappho, as well as the editor of Essays and a co-editor of Open the Door, How to Excite Young People About Poetry. Her first novel, Katie, is forthcoming. Her writing has appeared in Poetry, The New Yorker, American Poetry Review, and the Paris Review, among other places. Ariana Reines' newest books are Wave of Blood and The Rose. She runs Invisible College and lives in Queens. I'll welcome them up onto the stage, and afterwards, books are for sale, and they'll be signing them. But thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for being here, and thank you for having us. Thank you to 192 Books. Oh, sorry. Thank you to 192 Books. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so hi. I wanted to just acknowledge that it's the full moon in Gemini tonight, which is really thrilling because I remember the day I met you, and the first thing you asked me was what my astrology was. And I feel like every time I'm with you, you make me more myself. Like I feel ultra Scorpio beside you. But I just wanted to acknowledge the theme of twinning, which we'll be talking about a little bit in the book, because somehow I think we have semi-inverse astrology.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
we do. Yeah, but this evening is not about me. I'm the platform upon which Dottie's genius will be dazzling you. But I just thought it was kind of wild that we get to sit beside each other on this of all nights. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah. Memory is enchanting. I've been under its spell all week as well. And maybe will you start us off with some reading?
Sure, yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Yes, and in honor of your roses, I was going to read the essay in the book called The History of Roses. And it starts with a line, when Sophie will like this, from May Brusenberger from Hello the Roses. And the luminous field of being has a pulse. Growing up, I always thought roses were a bit cliche. We didn't have cut flowers in our house. Maybe it was the practice of boys getting their dates roses for school dances described on television. These rituals portrayed in sitcoms turned me off to roses entirely. A rose meant love, a pink one lust, a white rose meant you were pure. There was something so tedious about the whole endeavor. Can you guys hear me okay? That is until I met my high school boyfriend, Timothy. He was such a graceful soul. His mother grew roses in her backyard, and he would give me some from time to time. There was no reason for these gifts, just that the roses were in bloom. I remember the pungent sweetness of the pink ones and the airy, leathery breezes of the yellow ones. Even though I had learned that the yellow ones meant friendship, they were my favorite. Timothy wasn't sending me a symbolic message when he gently thrust a handful of yellow ones into my palm. He was simply giving me a beautiful thing. Sorry, and I'm not crying. I just will never learn about wearing glitter too close. Timothy and I got along very well, in fact. And yet there wasn't anything of relationship that can suck the passion out of anything exciting. He was a boy with a strange wit that brought me his mother's roses, Roses redeemed themselves in this important moment of my late adolescence. My history of roses started with the first rose he gave me. I remember it was coral pink. Roses and my first encounter with his romantic love made me think of roses as something that should always be connected to a love affair. Roses became connected for me as an idea with devotedness in general. If something meant something to you, you got it a rose. I still feel that way. Over the years, roses for me became synonymous with truth and even domesticity. I remember telling an old boyfriend before we got engaged that what I really wanted in my life was a series of rose bushes full of yellow roses. I do not think what I was saying registered with him at all. Does he even remember me saying it? I'll never know. Now in my middle age, roses are mystical. Roses are the afterlife. They are the promise that romantic love exists between the spaces of existence after all. When my father lost his memory, it wasn't all in one years. I remember the first time I noticed it. My parents were visiting me in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I was in my first year of MF, the father I hadn't seen in so long. I remember trying to explain to him that I was so happy to see him, the him I remembered. I hadn't seen that fragment of him in what felt like forever, but he didn't understand what I meant. He wanted to know what we should do to help my mother. I didn't have the right answer for this either. I had my complete memory and presence, but I didn't know even then how to help her. Perhaps it was cruel of me to mention to him that I missed him. I should have just existed in the present with him. He didn't know the past. He only knew what love was then, in that moment. When all things as we know them cease to exist, there is still love. The bonds we share last forever. I know that now. When Mitchell and I were last in St. Louis, he brought me a book called Anyone Can Grow Roses by Dr. Cynthia Westcott at a used bookstore. Westcott designates herself on the title page as the plant doctor. It was published in 1952 by the D. Van Nostrand Company Incorporated, a publishing company I know nothing about. The book is dedicated to the life. She was a famous rose expert with a 1932 PhD from Cornell, studying under Professor Herbert Heiss Witzel there. In 1952, I wouldn't be born for another 26 years, and yet here we are, she and I, somehow in a sort of conversation. It is said that when Dr. Westcott studied botany, she was given very feminized roles among her peers, which including archiving types of roses. It was in this likely mind-numbingly dull cataloging that she was exposed to more roses of her stature. Undoubtedly, she carried with her these facts that she had learned while cataloging the roses into the future work she did. The short text is highly detailed and yet written accessibly. It is presented as if to teach. I've always wanted the way I speak and write to be accessible to others. This has involved taking the poetry out of a lot of my language at times, and also maybe the knowledge too. Conversely, sometimes I've inserted poetry into my speech in a silly way when I thought it might make people feel better, so that they might see me as someone who doesn't take herself too seriously. I haven't wanted to overwhelm or even dazzle anyone. In much of my everyday life, I maintain an air of idiocy so as not to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Seeing my brilliant father forget almost everything, at least on the surface level, because it's likely these memories were still somehow hidden within him, has made me rethink my tactics for the rest of my life. In her chapter, Choosing Roses, Westcott writes of a peace rose, which she deems the most popular present-day rose, and a flower very large, changing from yellow to pink, suffused with yellow and white. Are we meant to think that maybe a peace rose transforms? Later in the same chapter, she mentions a high noon rose and a red favorite rose that is oxblood red with velvety flowers of continuous bloom. I had a dream after my mother died that I was in a car in the back seat, and my dad was driving as he would have when I was little. My mother ran short, and she flinched as he was driving. There was a nervous sense to her that felt like her, although I don't remember her being scared of my dad driving. Maybe it wasn't him. I said, "Mom, Mom," but she didn't turn around in the dream. Dr. Westcott died in March of 1983, 5 days before my 5th birthday. May everyone who has ever loved someone live in the hearts of others forever in continuous bloom. In Herman Melville's Rose Window, he writes, "I saw an angel with a rose come out of morning's garden gate, and lamp-like hold the rose aloft, he entered a sepulchral strait." In the poem, a rose becomes the lamp that shines light upon the dead. Did Melville mean that the beauty of joy, that it lights the way beyond whatever we can comprehend, is the everlasting? Life wears you away. Your body becomes a toy you use in a kind of childhood. And that's the good story. The petals of your life fall away as your control over it subsides. The relaxation of age and then death somehow exists within existence, but not over it. There is a fixed nature to existing, and so be it. Gertrude Stein wrote, "Rose is a rose, is a rose, is a rose. Is a rose what lights the way for all of us?" When I finally get to the afterlife, I am going to give my dad a rose. My mom didn't like being given fresh flowers. I'll give her a piece of jewelry instead, the biggest gem that there is, in whatever colors they have there. Dad, I'll hand him a giant, thriving pink rose. Will he take it? I cannot wait to see. Or perhaps I'll just stand there, forever in the gesture of holding it out to him, in the tarot card of eternity. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry if that was a little long, and having glitter difficulties are really hard. They need to make some better situations for that, yeah.
Is it okay if I begin to ask you questions?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay. So roses appear throughout the book, and I love that they are returned to their mystery again and again. But there's a section where you talk about flatness, and you allude to it in this essay as well, about kind of where you say that you intentionally idiotic, which you do not, but there's a really, really subtle and interesting, to me, like the most profound digression on American flatness that I've ever read. It's on page 159, I believe. And at one point you even talk about a flattened rose being something American. So could you talk a little bit about American language and flatness and what happens when the rose gets flattened?
Yes, yeah. Thank you so much for that question and for reading and seeing that in there. And I've always been really obsessed with kind of American paintings, and I'm sorry I'm not going to reference this correctly, but almost like from the Northeast that have the top of the painting just right up to the head of whatever it is. And and I'm sorry I don't know the exact name of the big cat, where it's and the top of the painting. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, next time I should have visuals. But it always felt akin to the way that we speak and the way that American English functions in the everyday, because it is very kind of simple. And back a long time ago, I studied Latin, and what I was always interested in is that in Latin they say syntax doesn't matter because you just look at the end, and so you kind of have to wait for the end. And in American English, oftentimes we have the subject just right there, front and center. And because of that, the rest of the syntax just gets very flat and precise. And I feel like somebody like Hemingway is a perfect example when you look at his sentences, that that flatness. And I just think deadpan in general is something I've always wanted to write about, and I kind of wanted to write about it for this book, but it didn't really like happen because I feel I would have to be smarter to really write about it well. But I just think that kind of twinning between comedy and horror is like the classic sort of deadpan nature, and I think growing up in the Midwest also has an air of that, because there is a way that everyday speech is just flattened like that, and there's a kind of sense of politeness or whatever, and not expressing all the emotions that are right there on the surface. And I don't know, the flattened rose, I love flattening a rose, yeah, because I love keeping things forever, and there's like the possibility in something flat.
I think you did write about American flatness in this with great eloquence, and I feel like there's a way that your poetics works with flatness in a rose-like way, because you make you create a layering that evokes a mystery. So you work with that flatness, I think, in a very unique way, both in prose and in your poetry. And I love the way the book kind of slips into horror. I mean, you talk about, there's a lot of horror movies in the book. I don't want to make too many spoilers, but is it okay?
Yeah, let's spoil.
There's a lot of horror movies in the book, and I it's so funny. It's like our opposite astrology at work again. I am too scared to watch horror, but everyone always thinks that I love it. But it's just because I'm horrifying. But it's not the same. But so in memory,
still water sign. Yeah,
it's true. But so there's a lot about The Shining and the new Suspiria and The Exorcist, but also this deeper horror that's under the American flatness, which you talk about. And the book's terrors and the way that it gets into the uncanny valley of what it means to be a poet in America is really. And I noticed that there was also a terror of Judaism. And I was wondering if we could talk about it.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean, I think some of that, like this terror of being, is there's just this sense like everything is fine, and the way people are talking to each other and doing everything, even though everything is very much like not fine at all.
You say, I'm just going to quote you to yourself, a good horror story, a space where everything completely terrible is simply acknowledged.
Yes.
I love that. I thought that was the most beautiful definition of what horror is that I've ever read.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I love Stephen King's definition because, and I'm sorry if I'm misquoting this too, but he says like terror is not being near the monster, but knowing it's near and just like being scared, like the monster is going to show up. But horror is like seeing the monster. And I feel like this American deadpan is kind of like seeing the monster, but the language kind of doesn't let that be expressed.
Beautiful. So can we also talk about the moon then?
Yes, the moon is, and it's the full moon.
Yeah. Well, there's what I love about the way the moon appears, just like flatness, just like horror, just like there's not a stable definition. Like you evoke meaning without like killing it. And so things keep unfolding and blooming through the book. And but you say something really interesting on page 172. You say,
thank you so much for reading.
I wanted to be really nerdy for you. You say, I never show anyone my moon. What does that mean?
Well, and you do have an Aries moon, right?
No, I have a Taurus moon.
Oh, why do I always forget
so
this?
you're Aries with Scorpio moon, right?
Yes.
And I'm Scorpio, Aries rising, Taurus moon.
And I always mess it up. I had a friend who was a Scorpio, and I just wanted her to have an Aries moon so she would be like my, opposite, but she ended up having an Aquarius moon. So anyway, I guess maybe, okay, that's another conversation. Sorry about, but I think of like in kind of more literal terms, like I think of the moon sign of someone as like their id. And so you just don't see the id unless you're really special to them. And like the id just doesn't have a place to come out like in everyday life. And so there's a way that the moon always is kind of, hidden in that way, like especially if it is a personality trait. But I think the moon, kind of became a foil in this book, or it always is in my mind. I do believe in the moon, and I do think the moon is real, just, but it's also a way that, and I guess we can see it outside because it looks great in the park. Yeah, right by. But I do think it's also just completely an illusion also. I mean, obviously I don't really think it's an illusion, but it might as well be one as well. And I think the secret parts of ourselves might as well be illusions that, as well.
I think this is so Scorpio moon of you. Like your whole take on the moon is so much darker and more rich and complex than the way that you think about the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, the moon landing in particular.
Well, yes. I know. Now everyone leaves after. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
we love it. We love it. We love it. This is where it gets good.
Yeah. Well, I think that I have a tendency not to trust anything I'm told, and especially not trust anything I'm told by an authoritative body. So like I want to trust it, but I can't really completely trust any of it, because again, I think it does go back to language, that the language constructed to give to many people. And it's kind of ironic because I've always wanted to write that language also. So maybe it's like a sick part of myself as well. I've always wanted to write language that was educative for everyone, whatever that's supposed to mean, I'm not really sure. But that's kind of maybe the same instinct of writing the way one would write, for a body of people. But there's always a way that it's like speaking something real and not. There's always deception in it. So I think that's, and I know, thinking about one of the essays, just using that theory of like the moon landing as like a place to really explore that, because it feels less, it's less, I don't know why I say it's less at stake, but, in a way it is, if it is or is not, real, there's less at stake, I feel like, whatever the truth is.
I love that you insist on the moon as id and the moon as deception, because for me this is like really novel. Like I've kind of only encountered that maybe in like the Aleister Crowley moon card. Like he's kind of harsh on the moon, as are you. And I'm realizing, oh right, like because I'm Scorpio sun, so I think of the sun as deception. But
and I love the moon.
Yes, that's clear that you love the moon. And of course the moon belongs to poets, right?
Yes. And the moon is such like an important, to me, like the moon is maybe the most important, force. But I think, I also just think about the vastness of the universe, that, we absolutely have no comprehension of what that is, or, what we're doing, or what it could possibly be, or our place within it. And I think this idea of like the singular moon, because now like a second moon that it's going to hang out for a while. It's been here for like 50 years and we didn't even know. And I think it's going to be here for a while more. I'm not sure. Like just the idea that it is just this one moon that we're focused on, when probably our ways of possibly moon is not precise at all. So like that, just that like adherence to that, like the moon, I really love as like the lie and the beauty.
Can you take this multiple moon, can you carry that into the realm of the imagination? Because the book also like oscillates and like pedals through the relation between memory and imagination in a really unique way.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons that, obviously in homage to Bernadette Mayer's memory project, I wanted to do something on memory, but it's also to my father who died of Alzheimer's. And so I thought a lot about memory when I was kind of like watching that, and just the idea of the physicalities of the brain. And I've always been a big believer actually in science and the possibility that we could find a cure for all, that it is like the description of plaques on the brain, and that if there was a certain drug that could decrease the plaques, the memories would come back and the memories still existed there. Like those descriptions of the physicalities of what was happening, I still might as well believe in. I still believe in that. But there is something of that which also doesn't really relate to the imagination, because I think that there's the possibility that the imagination is a kind of plane of existence that, especially artists, but all of us have access to. Maybe it's at one specific and universal at the same time, that possibly memory is connected to. And if that is the case, then in the physical world, losing one's memory is kind of not really, it doesn't matter, which is comforting in this way, that your memories would come back to you and that you're not limited by your physicality of the brain. So anything, and that's something that's like been hard to get my head around, but I possible.
I feel it in my belly. Do you believe in time? Do you think it's real?
I think time is real, but I think linear time is not real at all. And I think it's silly
to all agree on. It's a convenience, and it's also like a way for us to make a certain kind of order that our brains are capable at this time, at this stage of evolution, of kind of sharing in common. But something weird happens when you're a poet, which is your poems end up coming true, don't they?
They absolutely do. And I think about this, like, what you're saying, it's like time word, it's actually, there's a lot of violence under the service of apple. I don't actually know the history of the word apple, so, but anyway, okay, we'll look that up later. I'm like, what if it's completely benign? But just as an example, and like, but we agree upon like the word apple so that we can, get an apple. So when I say, could you get me an apple, like it's, all okay. But, and like time is that kind of language, like we have to agree upon as linear, but it's just not. If you're a poet, you just completely understand that it's not the necessarily precise way of understanding what's happening. So and you feel like you've written poems where they've told you the future.
I have Mercury in retrograde in my natal chart, and I have Mercury conjunct Uranus, so I think that also explains why the time in my life doesn't function in a linear way. Like things happen before they like things are not happening in a proper sequence. Maybe that's just for me, but I feel like all poetry in a way is under the sign of Gemini, right?
Yeah.
On some level.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't know, and there's just something a little bit freaky about it, like the weird twinning is already happening in you.
Yes, I think for sure, yes, absolutely. And I think because I think poetry is a language that is like a tool that's shared in an immortal way. So it's like we make language to get through the living life, but we make poetry because it's an immortal conversation, which might not necessarily be like spiritual per se. It may just be that non-linear sense of time is what poetry is the language of.
I want to say this again. That was so beautiful. Poetry is a tool that we use in an immortal way.
Yes.
I fucked it up already.
I don't
It's
exactly
in the recording
remember.
though. It's because it's fucking Gemini. Now I'm getting all upside down.
I feel totally chaotic right now.
The same. There's a gorgeous passage in the book where you talk about, I think you're explaining the value of education. And you say that what learning is and building memory is creating a tool in the mind. And I thought, that's exactly right. And but no one's ever put it that way that I've heard before. That's a beautiful definition of what an education should be. You're building a tool inside your mind.
Yeah.
That's what memory is for, you say.
Yeah, it's something I think I stole a little bit from my teacher, Dara, where she said, you know, the point is just to build all these tools and make like a big tool belt because you don't know what will happen in life. So you want to have every tool like imaginable so that you can write the poem. And I think about that just learning in general. Like you have to build as much learning as you have passion to accrue because you never know when you're going to need it. Not necessarily like you have to stockpile like survival tactics or something, but maybe possibly.
There's a line that I love in essay Poetry is Not a Project, which came out as a chapbook, so a lot of people might already know that you say poems come from the earth and work through the mind from the ground up. So I wonder if you could talk more about poetry and the earth.
Yes, and the earth is very important, and I definitely believe the earth is real, probably. The earth is going to show me it is if I don't say that, but yeah, I think just so much of the way, I think it's just, I think a lot about that essay, and when I wrote it, it was meant to be like about education because I was studying education a lot, and I've always been against this idea of like sage on the stage and the teacher, lifts open the brain and like pours the content into it, and that it comes from the top down. Because I think knowledge, creativity is emergent and does like happen along the way as you have to get in it to experience it and have it come out and emerge and be something that you create. And C.A. Conrad has this idea of the black field that is like, you probably have heard them talk about this, but it's like this infinitely rich place that is so rich with possibility, like everything is there. And when you create something, you go to the black field and like kind of just like lift it up out of the ground, and it becomes this thing, and you can find anything there. But I feel like that's the emergence that you tap into in the best kind of education.
I love that because Conrad's black field is like the black earth of alchemy.
Yes, yeah. And I think it is probably like some land of the land that is the imagination.
I found myself thinking as I was reading Memory, because it's Gemini, full moon, that like poetry is also friendship. And it's weird because when I was never explicitly told that, but the understanding that poetry is friendship emerges from the poems. Like, even if you were like an alien from outer space, if you were reading like Bernadette's poems or Conrad's poems or your poems, you would be like, oh, a poet is someone with friends.
Yes. And I think that like poetry makes friendship across time. I've always like had a hard time making friends like in life or having, friendships per se. I've always had like the idea of the friends in the poems, and that because there was like infinite depth to that relationship, and we could be anything together.
I relate to that. I'm trying to keep my eye on time because I'm the docent.
Sorry, yeah.
How are we doing, Terrence? Oh, great. Okay,
do you
good.
want to? Oh, no, but no pressure. Oh.
I can read a little if you want. And I thought I would just... Dottie asked me to read. I didn't intend to, but then I found a poem that I forgot I read, and it seemed to relate to your book and your work and this whole conversation. So I'll read a little bit from it, and then we'll keep on.
Yeah.
Is that okay? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to swallow my gum.
No. Oh, no.
It's going to stay in my esophagus forever. And it's all of your fault. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to open this water. I know this is awkward. Sorry.
This was published in Artforum back when I did that. And they gave it the title Alchemy Forever, but I don't really know if it has a title. I had an experience of a country, which is a place on planet Earth of wild beauty to which no word in the English language can accurately be appended. It was a romance that I was taken into, which made me wild and humbled me beyond all speech. A legend that grew into facts, ravages of ravages I doubt I ever will be able to speak to. I knelt in love. I crawled for love. I too had had dreams of revolution, but I would not pretend to powers that lord and lady I lacked. There are histories of magic speech that should not be written down. Look, I was a woman with a problem. I didn't come all this way to deceive you. It was a problem I could not resolve, and because my problem was unsolvable, I was shown miracles. Impossible things were shown to my naked eye, as if to say, the resolution of your problem is not the purpose of your errand. Your problem produces heat in you, intolerable heat you have converted to prayer, and I, girl, am the issue of your prayer. Woman, I am the issue of it. But it was not your prayer that made me. It just goes on.
Thank you. Love that. I feel like it's so much in conversation with what we're talking about. Yes. Yeah. And just like there's almost like a twinning happening with the self and what's happening in the poem. Yeah.
And in a way, the poem twins you too, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You say askew. You call it askew doubling in memory. But I wonder if we could talk specifically about White Christmas and the is it Grady or O'Grady sisters?
Oh, the Grady.
The Grady sisters, and the way that they appear to be twins but aren't. Could you talk a little bit about that in the Uncanny Valley?
Yes, yeah. Well, if people, this could be a spoiler alert if no one's seen The Shining, but maybe you have, but maybe you know the Shining twins, or at least has Googled it. They, they are sisters, but in the movie, they are dressed in the same outfit. And so when you see them at the end of the hallway, you're supposed to think of them a little bit like mirrors of each other. And so there's the uncanny of the mirror, the uncanny of the doubling. But what makes it more sublime is that because they are sisters, one's just a little taller, they're not perfect like replicas of each other. And so there is this askew kind of like twinning of that. And I remember watching White Christmas and I was like, oh my God, he must have gotten the twins from the song, sisters, sisters, and they're dressed in very similar muted blue dresses, and they don't really look the same, but yet they're trying to be the same. And it's like that I do be the same as someone in a kind of soulmate or sisterhood or friendship or like poem way, trying to double but not completely ever being able to, because even mirrors are imprecise and it's not possible to be perfect fits, with anything. To me is just like the epitome of the sublime, that you can never reach that place. And I always loved the limit in calculus, and I didn't get very far in calculus. So I don't know, I'm sure it's more complex than this, but the limit is you never can reach it. It's no matter what you do, you're just never gonna reach it. And that to me has always been the sublime. And so that's this idea of standing with your sister in the same outfit at the end of the hallway. You're never going to really have a soulmate, and the end result is always going to be terror that you inflict in others and yourself.
So on
happy full moon, everyone.
But I love how terror is actually a really important theme in this book. And that quotation of yours that I read back to you about horror, you describe horror, the genre, as a kind of comforting place because it's acknowledging the actual horribleness of the world, and it's a space where you can relax and it's because it's acknowledged. And so there's something comforting about that. But terror also happens in the book, and there's a really interesting encounter with an editor who's a kind of a devil character, a devil figure.
Oh, the Sagittarius. Yeah. Hope he's not. No, I don't know.
He needs to leave.
No, he can stay.
Well, I won't give away what happens in the essay, but there's a work of art that changes hands, and then money is demanded. And then there's a demand of money that is weird.
Yeah.
And there's an object that is loaned and then returned, but through that it's kind of an alchemical process. And I feel like the consciousness of the essay learns something about evil through the course of that. And I don't want to give away the essay, but would you talk a little bit about terror and maybe how evil or devilishness shows up in IRL?
Yes.
Not only on screen.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that terror, again, it goes back to, I think everything we're talking about is like the lie, that someone's lying, but you can't in any regular way, without just, are you lying? But they're not going to tell you. And that there's always something that they're trying to trick you. And I love tricksters, and it is, full moon in Gemini, so we love, Gemini tricksters. But they make me very nervous, because, and I think lies make me nervous in general. And in that particular essay, there was a deception where I was, given this, beautiful book, and then later asked to send money, which would be, I guess, okay, but it just doesn't feel, it's not like honest. The honest thing would be just to ask for it up front, or even before the book is given, this will be this much or whatever. And that feels like just the clarity of that. And so that it's that spiraling of the lie that he came to represent. And it made me think about him as emblematic of what's wrong with much of society in general, that there are so many lies and people are trying to trick each other oftentimes for different reasons. And sometimes the reason might be just to have fun. And that's kind of, the crux of a bad kind of sadism, I think.
The bad kind of sadism,
as
opposed to the good. Yeah. Well, what's interesting? Sorry about I'm banging the table with my copious jewelry. There's also an attempt to extract from you handwritten poems, and it reminded me of Rumpelstiltskin or something. It was like some kind of old fairy tale. And actually, I'm involved in a drama right now where there's a person who has taken on the role of Rumpelstiltskin in my life. They literally want my firstborn. It's like where somebody who is attractive in and of themselves, doesn't need to deceive you in order to get you interested and maybe giving them something or being interested in working with them, collaborating with them. But for some reason they choose this greedy and bad sadism where they're and there's this demand of handwritten poems. And I won't say, I don't want to ruin I won't say what happens, but I that demand reminded me of a pound of flesh or your firstborn child or it's this very, very strange kind of demand that often gets made of artists. And it seems to come from a kind of resentment. There's a kind of, it's para-artistic, and this sage figure who you will discover when you get the book is arty. It's kind of artsy, but not quite in it.
Doesn't completely get it.
Yeah,
but at the same time is you are attracted to it because somebody asking for handwritten poems is charming. And it's that kind of deception that happens on multiple levels, person to person, person to government, person to all the person to institution, maybe institution to institution, all different ways that when you look at it, it feels charming, but what it's really asking for is kind of evil because it is taking your soul, because to take a handwritten poem might as well be taking your soul, because that's really all you can leave, when you're gone is a handwritten poem.
And there's something priceless about it. You can't trade for something like that. It has to be freely given with an open heart.
Yeah.
But you can't just be like, you owe me,
Yeah.
you know, your own hand, whatever, written in blood.
Yeah.
But there's also something that
like a signature, you know, like
yes.
it's not just, you're not just signing the electric document, like they're faxing it to you. It's that important. They have to watch you sign it or something, because then you're giving your soul to it. And yeah, I just think about that, you know, the word testify. Sorry, this is probably not the best reference, but
it's a great reference.
It comes from the Roman word testes, because, you know, in the court of law, you'd hold your testes while you say, yes, it's true. And to me, that's like signing a document. I always think of that, because you're giving, you know, your like this life's whatever signature to that promise of whatever it is.
Absolutely. And it relates to also a twinning or an askew doubling of true and false memory that you also discuss in the book. So could you talk about what false memory is?
Yeah, yes. Well, I've always been fascinated by the idea that what we remember could not be real at all, and that, like, you know, there is many studies, or cognitive scientists or memory scientists, you know, do study this, that we say this happened exactly this way. And, you know, if you have evidence in some way, like photographic or whatever, it really isn't exactly the truth, and that we are always kind of like reconstituting what that experience is, again, with the future and the future way, and that it's not this objective thing that necessarily happened in the way we remember it. And that is very scary, actually, because it just suggests, in a good way, that our perspective is everything. But that also is, you know, scary, because what is objective what actually even ever happens then, if we're not sure. I remember my mom telling me that the painter Uccello one day like shot up in bed and said, I don't know if this is in there, he said, house of perspective, and that's just like the perspective of the artist is everything, but yet we can't trust it at all.
Would you read a little bit more from the book?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, do we have time, or what do you think? Or okay, is that okay? Okay,
please.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Because I don't want to read the whole. I want to read the whole thing, because this could. Okay, maybe I'll just read the end of the last essay, which is Time, Rose, and the Moon. Okay. Sometimes when I have been obsessed, fixated on a particular person or situation, and I am struck by myself for days, analyzing what has been said, I ask my best friend Eric to help me decode the wealth of language that has littered my brain. And always he gives the same answer, that it's pointless to care, and that to care about some situation or someone who doesn't care to the same extent is like waking up and being half in the dream, so much that you want to fix something in the dream. But once the dream has happened, you can't go back. It is a truly worthless, no, not worthless, no, it's an unreal situation. Time is potentially an accident, and the opposite of this idea is, and maybe the moon is the most fated thing of all. The moon is just a dream that you can't ever fix. The eternal rose lives in a very definite space. We all know what that rose looks like. It is the stylized rose, but not the bleeding one we hold in our hands that wilts in a day. The eternal rose does not have a sweet smell. It has the sweetest smell, but not the sweetest smell ever. The sweetest smell ever is love. The rose of nowhere has the sweetest smell ever. It is the rose of our time and the rose of the future, and it is the life-giving rose. It exists in no place. It grows on the moon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Dottie will be signing books.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again to 192 Books for having me and having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay. Yay.